We're learning a lot of cool things about networks, and the next thing which we're going to learn is something called bandwidth. And so the intent of this video is that by the time you get done with this video, you know what bandwidth is. And when we talk about bandwidth, we're talking about how much data can transfer over some sort of a connection, whether it's wired or a wireless connection. How much data can transfer over some type of a connection, wired or wireless, in a given amount of time. And that is bandwidth. And bandwidth is sometimes also known as throughput. So here's bandwidth, and it's sometimes known as throughput. I'm sure that's in here somewhere. Control F, throughput. There we go, throughput. And yeah, man, that's it. I like to think of it like this. I like to think of it kind of like a hose. And with a hose like you have out in your yard, if it's a very small hose, that would be called a narrow band. That would be narrow band, right? And not much water is going to get through that. If you had a fireman's hose, that would be considered broadband, and a lot of water is going to get through that. So that's just an analogy. And when we're talking about data transfer, if we have some sort of a connection where only a little bit of data can get through at a certain amount of time, the bandwidth of that connection is said to be narrow band. And if we have a really fat connection where a lot of data can get through really quickly, that's considered broadband. Now that's just an analogy, so it doesn't actually mean that you have this big cable that's this big, bringing in a whole lot of data. Fiber optic can move data very quickly, and it's very small. So bandwidth is just, the measure of how much data can go between one location to another over a certain type of connection, whether it's wired or wireless. I hope that makes sense. And another cool thing to know about this is you could type in bandwidth test. You could do a bandwidth test, and then they have different different places where you could do speed tests of your bandwidth. Here's reviews. Let's see if this actually does let us test here. About the speed test. What is throughput? What are kilobits per second? And that's actually bits in networking. It's bits and not bytes, right? So at home, select your location, at home. Bam, there's our speed test. 19,245 kilobits per second. Compare your result with what? I don't know. So I'm right here, 19. And cable, really, yeah, I don't know what that means. There's other ones. They look different. We've got other ones here. Let's do a speed test here. What do I want to test? Let's test going to San Francisco. Now I'm connecting to San Francisco, and there's the download speed. And now maybe it's going to test my upload speed. So I've got 9.7 megabits. Here I had 9.2, right? So about the same. 9.7. I think I'm paying for 20 megabits. That's a little bit disappointing. All right, so that is bandwidth, and that's how you do a bandwidth test to see how fast your computer's downloading and uploading data. And bandwidth is simply how much data can you move between one location to another, using a certain connection, whether it's wired or wireless. And it's also sometimes known as throughput. That's bandwidth.